Welcome to this interactive explainer workshop. Okay, so I want to kick things off today with a quick mental exercise. Think of the absolute most capable person you know, right? Like someone who is just incredibly skilled, thoroughly trained, undeniably brave, someone who literally always seems to have it all together. Got him pictured in your head? Okay. Now, I want you to imagine that exact person at the absolute most important moment of their entire life, just completely falling apart. I mean, sitting on the floor, shaking, refusing to move, and saying out loud, "I cannot do this." Just hold that image of total collapse in your mind for a second. Okay, let's dive into this, because that person I just described, that's Arjuna. He is the central figure in the Bhagavad Gita, and he's literally the legendary hero of his age. I mean, his very name actually translates to bright or clear. He was a guy totally defined by his clarity of purpose, somebody who had meticulously trained since childhood for one specific monumental moment. And yet, on the morning of the biggest, most consequential battle of his entire life, all that clarity just vanished. He didn't charge forward, he dropped his weapon, and he completely collapsed. So in today's explainer, we're going to figure out exactly why the greatest warrior broke down, and more importantly, what his breakdown can teach us about our own moments of personal crisis.
Now, to truly grasp the gravity of Arjuna's breakdown, we really have to look at his legendary resume. We need to establish just how extraordinary this guy was before the crisis hit, just to give you a stark contrast for what happens next. He wasn't just a good fighter, okay? He was born under divine circumstances, literally the son of Indra, the king of the gods. He was trained by Dronacharya, the absolute greatest teacher in the world, who actually called Arjuna his finest student. He was an ambidextrous archer. He could shoot with both hands equally well and hit targets in pitch darkness. There's this famous story where he won a contest by looking at the reflection of a rotating fish in a pool of water, and he shot it perfectly in the eye without even looking up. I mean, think about the sheer impossible focus that requires. Total, unwavering command over his mind, his body, his environment. He had faced down demons, gods, and monsters. By literally every conceivable metric, he was an unshakable hero, which makes his upcoming loss of focus all the more staggering.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the formal name of the very first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which translates to the yoga of Arjuna's grief, or the yoga of dejection. Notice how incredibly profound that is. The formal path of practice, the opening to one of humanity's absolute greatest spiritual and philosophical texts. It's not framed as some massive triumph. It isn't a moment of unwavering strength or this glorious speech. No, it is framed entirely around a massive, debilitating breakdown. So let's set the scene of exactly how this turning point unfolds. Two massive armies are assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The conch shells are blown, which is the signal for the imminent, totally irreversible start of the war. Arjuna asks his chariot driver, Krishna, to drive right to the dead center of the battlefield so he can see the enemy clearly. So Krishna does this, and then Arjuna looks. And as this quote beautifully and tragically captures, he looks across the lines, and he doesn't see faceless enemies. He sees his fathers, his grandfathers, his favorite teachers, his uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, his companions. He sees his family. The text describes his reaction not just as a fleeting moment of hesitation, but as a devastating, intense physical collapse. The psychological weight manifests immediately in his body. His limbs fail, his mouth becomes completely dry, his body violently quivers, his hair stands on end, his skin actually burns, he literally cannot stand up, and then the bow slips from his fingers. Let's just pause and sit with that image for a second. The greatest warrior on earth, letting his legendary weapon, the very symbol of his entire identity, just slip from his hands, leaving absolutely nothing but an emotional vacuum in its place. In this profound state of collapse, he turns to Krishna and says words that literally echo through history. "I do not wish for victory. What is kingdom to us, or enjoyment, or even life, if those for whose sake we desire these are standing here in battle?" As we move through this explainer together, I really want to validate his despair right here. Because Arjuna sits down in his chariot and weeps, but I want to be incredibly clear about this. This is absolutely not cowardice. He's not running away from a fight because he's scared of getting hurt. This is a profound, earth-shattering crisis of meaning.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between what we think fear looks like and what actual existential dread is. You know, the perceived fear for a soldier on a battlefield is arrows, injury, physical death. But Arjuna had faced death countless times before. He wasn't afraid of dying. His actual fear, the thing that brought this unparalleled hero to his knees, was the complete and total loss of purpose and meaning. It was the sudden realization that winning this battle might actually mean losing his own soul. We can actually break this collapse down into 4 distinct, deeply psychological root causes. First up, the conflict of love and duty. Arjuna deeply loved the people he was supposed to kill. I mean, how do you reconcile your professional duty to fight with the reality of raising a weapon against the grandfather who held you as a child? Second, the question of consequences. He was a thinker. He realized that a victory soaked in the blood of his own family would just leave him with a kingdom of orphans and widows. He recognized the generational trauma this war would inflict. Third, a complete loss of purpose. Think about how often we tie our entire identities to our job titles or our roles in life, right? Arjuna's whole identity was wrapped up in being a righteous warrior. But now, he was questioning if that role was even justified. When your core purpose collapses, your entire world collapses with it. And fourth, the crushing weight of responsibility. He wasn't just a foot soldier. He was the linchpin. If he refused to fight, the morale of his entire army would shatter. Everyone was watching him, expecting him to lead. The sheer burden of his own greatness and the expectations of others were literally crushing him.
I want to pause the analysis right here for a second and ask you a direct question. What was your Arjuna moment? Because look, you don't need an ancient battlefield to understand exactly what he was feeling. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty to a person and loyalty to your own conscience? Have you ever had to continue doing a job or a project that you completely stopped believing in just because other people were depending on you? Maybe you woke up one day, looked around at the life you had built and realized it just no longer felt meaningful. That honest collapse, that hidden, quiet struggle where you feel like you just can't take another step forward, that is your Arjuna moment.
So the crucial point is this. The breakdown is not a detour. It is the destination. The profound wisdom of the Gita could never have been spoken to an Arjuna who was confident, who had all the answers, or who was just performing false bravery for his troops. No way! It could only be received by an Arjuna who was completely, honestly, undeniably broken. The confusion wasn't a flaw in his character, it was the crack where the light could finally enter. Without the breakdown, the breakthrough is literally impossible.
And that brings us to the climax of this workshop. The ultimate breakthrough happens right here in chapter 2, verse 7. In a state of total vulnerability, Arjuna pleads, "My mind is confused about duty. I ask you, tell me decisively what is good for me. I am your disciple. Instruct me." He stops pretending. He doesn't push through with fake strength or, toxic positivity. He completely surrenders to his confusion, and he sincerely asks for help. For a legendary warrior, admitting he didn't know what to do took way more courage than any physical battle he had ever fought. That honest question, born from a place of genuine desperation, is the true beginning of his wisdom.
Let's move to and see how this builds into 3 highly actionable, timeless lessons for our own lives today. Number 1, greatness doesn't protect you from crisis. The most capable, hyper-prepared people still break down, and that is a mark of humanity, not a mark of failure. Number 2, honest confusion is the doorway to wisdom. You have to admit you don't know the way forward before you can truly learn something new. You literally have to drop the bow. And number 3, your darkest moment may actually be your most sacred one. This epic spiritual text, revered for thousands of years, was born in a moment of total collapse. Sometimes, we really must completely fall apart to be rebuilt into who we are meant to be.
To wrap up our explainer workshops today, I want to leave you with a specific, personal take-home assignment. I highly encourage you to literally write this down. Fill in these blanks for yourself. My Arjuna moment was blank. And what it taught me was blank. Take some time to really reflect on that today. Think about how the moment you dropped your metaphorical bow, the moment you felt like you couldn't go on, was actually the very beginning of a profound personal breakthrough, because it almost always is. So keep asking those honest questions, keep embracing the confusion, and I'll see you in our next explainer.